Welcome to the Smart Connector podcast, which helps entrepreneurs generate more impact, wealth, and success, attract others for all the right reasons, and become a smart connector, the architect of your amazing business and life. This podcast is sponsored by Virtual Non-Execs, the world's #1 peer-to-peer board advisor community, which connects thousands of investors, entrepreneurs, and advisors globally. I was delighted to be invited onto the World of Lord Russell Baker podcast for this far-reaching discussion on the highs and lows of entrepreneurship, as well as my personal and professional journey. Lord Russell is an explorer, philanthropist, sportsman and author who loves to interview legends and icons across the sporting, creative and business worlds. If you enjoyed this interview, make sure to check out his podcast too. Now, go ahead, dive in and let me know if any thoughts or questions arise for you out of our discussion. Enjoy.
A very warm welcome to the World of Lord Russell podcast talk show. And today's show is Business and Motivational Inspiration, which captures the life of a British business lady and entrepreneur. She is an entrepreneur, investor, top 2.5% global podcaster, a motivational speaker, and brand and online marketer who has built multiple businesses, including a London brand identity business that she grew from £1 million to £6 million in under 2 years. That's so impressive, that really is. Quadrupling profits and selling to a US communications group. Yes, folks, it gives me immense pleasure to welcome onto the show Jane Bayler. Welcome to the show, Jane.
Thank you so much, Lord Russell. It's absolutely fantastic to be here, and I'm so pleased to be able to spend the next hour or so in your company. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. It's an absolute pleasure. And I say, the pleasure's all mine, Jane. It really is. So let's get right into the core of Jane Bayler. You've had a roller coaster of triumphs as well as challenges in your life, from a troubled childhood on the streets to establish and quitting a high-flying global career in media and entertainment to starting your own business. You could say you've learned so many valuable and sometimes painful lessons along the way. So please tell us more about these troubled yet exciting milestones in your life, Jane.
Yes, thank you so much, Lord Russell. Well, I think troubled and exciting sometimes goes together, because if we live a very dull and boring life and we don't take any risks, then that's one way of living. But is it really living, or is it just existing?
Agreed.
I think anybody that wants to have a more adventurous and exciting life and really get the most out of life, and let's face it, we're not here for very long on this planet. I think it's inevitable that we're going to have some struggles along the way, and that's just all part of the journey, isn't it? Struggles, triumphs, lessons. It's just all part of the rich mix of life.
It certainly is indeed. And, I value your comments completely as kind of the walk I take too. You've got to take risks, haven't you, in life? You really have.
Yes.
You have stated, Jane, that you've experienced the highest of highs and the lowest of lows. You've been wealthy and you've had financial struggles. Oh, haven't we all? You've enjoyed success and amazing relationships and suffered loss, failure, trauma and betrayal too. This all sounds like a bit like my life journey too. So please explain more, Jane.
Well, how can I summarize my entire life in a few sentences? It's been quite a long life, actually, up until now. But let's start at the beginning. So you talked about my life on the streets, and I think that does make me sound a little bit like a homeless waif. And
Not at all.
Well, I mean, those were my words as well. But I should clarify that I actually come from quite a privileged background compared to some people. I grew up in a very, very nice area in quite a wealthy home. We had a very large house. I was privately educated. So it all looked very, very nice from the outside. But I think a lot of people don't quite understand that sometimes there can be challenges in those, let's just say, very privileged environments as well. Because my parents really, really struggled. And I think it wasn't that they didn't love us. I think, of course, they most parents love their children. There'd be something really wrong with them if they don't. but they had their own struggles. And particularly my mother was quite a troubled person. And what that meant is that there wasn't really a lot left over for us in terms of their time, their love, their attention, all of that. There was some addiction issues. Obviously, we all know that that is not really conducive to a great childhood. My father was away a lot and also very, very busy in a very high level corporate career. So, and he, in himself, he had his own struggles, and, he rose from a very humble beginnings in a very working class area of Liverpool. And so, yeah, I mean, it just, to a certain extent, it was what we experienced was quite normal at the time, in that I think parents had less of a tendency to wrap their children up in cotton wool and protect them from the world. But at the same time, what it meant really is that I more or less had freedom to do whatever I wanted from a very, very early age.
Wow.
Yes, and that was good and bad in equal measure, let's just say.
Oh, I can see that too completely. And hopefully more good than bad, though, Jane. But they're all good experiences in life, aren't they? Because you're learning from yourself, you're learning from what you're doing, the mistakes you've made as a child, and you learn from them, don't you, hopefully?
Well, you do learn from them, yes. And I think children are not really supposed to bring themselves up. They're not really supposed to be
No,
kind of out there in the world just at the mercy of whoever wants to befriend them, if you know what I mean. But
indeed.
that is the way it was. And I certainly had a lot of adventures that a lot of other people my age didn't have. So that's all good. And yeah, it's, as I said, it's all part of the rich tapestry of life.
I quite agree indeed. A rich tapestry it is too.
Yeah.
Now, yes, indeed. Now, you love to share these experiences to others and your clients, as you're doing on the show this afternoon.
Yeah.
But don't have to learn the hard way like you, do they? This is a very commendable, Jane, isn't it, really? They're open with your experiences to everybody.
Well, I think there's no point in just sharing edited highlights. That's a little bit boring, but it's also inauthentic. Obviously, social media is a place where most people do reveal the edited highlights, but
Mm,
personally, I am somebody who I like to be relatable to other people, and I also like to give them strength as well, because I think if people know that you've struggled and you've been through hard times and you
mm.
are where you are right now, then it can inspire others who are going through similar or perhaps have been through similar. And they think, well, if she can do it, then I can do it too. And that's why I like to really share quite openly about the good and the bad experiences that I've had.
Yeah, I think you're right too. I mean, to share both sides of the coin is the right thing to do, isn't it? As you say, a lot of people on social media they just paint what's good, and of course, probably they have more problems than they have successes, but they never talk about the problems, do they?
No, people don't talk about the problems. And I think the golden rule on social media is that it is good to talk about problems that are in the past,
Mm.
because that way people can learn alongside you without actually having to go through those things that you went through. When you are talking about problems in the present, you can end up bringing people down along with you. So I think that's generally not a good thing to do. But sometimes it's okay. But I think really it's all about sharing and inspiring and just giving people a reason to feel good, as far as I'm concerned. And some of that is like, oh, you know what? I've been through that as well. And she's articulated the thing that I haven't been able to say or haven't been able to get out there in the world to talk about. And she's doing it. And that's a thing that I really love to do. And the reason why I love podcasting as a medium.
Precisely. And of course, as a result of these multiple challenges and reaching rock bottom, you learned how to rapidly eliminate the wrong people in your life. We all need to do that, whilst effortlessly attracting the right ones. I mean, now this is a very true statement, of course, Jane, it truly is, but learning to attract the right people is a journey in itself, isn't it, Jane? It's quite a hard journey to learn, really.
Yes, it is. But I realized that I was actually brought up with faulty wiring, because
Oh, dear.
I was, unfortunately, I was taught you stand alone in this world. And I think my parents very much kind of gave me that impression and
Mm,
really that lesson, because they just didn't really have the means to to really stand beside me and actually care for me as perhaps a parent would like to have done. So I went out there in the world thinking nothing that anybody does is going to make a difference to me. I have to make it on my own terms. And that is actually part of a syndrome that is called ACOA, which is Adult Child of Addiction, where basically you are taught to become adult, if you like, before your years. But it is also a very, very flawed belief system, because we have always known, and all the greatest philosophers, and even in the Bible and in all the religious texts throughout history, have emphasized that we are stronger together.
I quite
And
agree.
yeah, and so that is a lesson that it took me a long time to learn, that I must never, ever underestimate the power of people in my life ever again, after I'd had some painful personal and business experiences. And now all of the people that I have in my life and in my business are just amazing, because I've learned to filter and qualify people who are, they don't have my best interests in mind. And that is quite a hard thing to do. And it's not always easy to do that immediately. But I think it's just a very, very important lesson that everybody needs to learn. Only surround yourself with those who lift you higher.
I quite agree. And do you think over time that becomes quite an instinct, sort of instinctive to you? You can judge people openly and well based on how they act, their body movements, how they look at you, talk. Do you think that's a skill you learned, to judge the people in the right? Or am I being a bit out of turn here? I mean, you can't judge a book by its cover, for example, can you? But getting to the point of understanding whether someone's good or bad is quite a skill.
Yes, well, there are clues, I think, certainly. And I think that people, you can get a sense for people, let's say, but your instinct can also be wrong. And also, bad people can be very good at being very charming and very persuasive, and you can easily be duped into thinking that they are really good people, or they're not just entirely selfishly motivated. So how do you actually tell whether somebody is going to be good for you? Well, you look at their actions and you look at their behavior, and you don't just look at what they say. I think that's it, really. And you look for consistent, predictable patterns over time. So normally it will take maybe up to 3 months before you really get the measure of someone. But I always say to any of my clients or my associates or whatever, don't jump into bed with somebody, literally or figuratively speaking, until you've actually put them to the test. You've spent that time with them, and you've given them little bits of you, and you've actually seen what comes back, and you've seen whether your efforts are reciprocated, and whether you're getting that respect, and whether, a nice rhythm is developing. And that goes for personal as well as professional relationships. And just take it slowly, because people do reveal their true natures over time. And that was something that I had to learn. As I said, I didn't really understand that early in my life, and I used to jump into all sorts of relationships. And that was just how it was. But I'm wiser now.
Of course, yeah, wiser in the later years, absolutely.
Yeah.
So in some ways, your earlier childhood did develop you to become a great adult, so as to speak, with those mistakes in the earlier years, and to learn how to to tell whether people are good or bad. It's a fantastic experience to have in some ways, isn't it, Jane? Really, you got there probably sooner than others.
Well, yeah, let's just say I was very streetwise. I grew up in London. I was,
Mm,
always just out and about in London. And I think when you are in that environment, it's a bit like a sort of urban jungle, and you're out there
it
with
is.
everybody. And so you do end up being streetwise. But being streetwise, you can still make a lot of mistakes. And I think being streetwise is not the same as being emotionally intelligent.
Mm,
So they are different things. You can sense danger maybe, and you can recognize when people are going to maybe do you harm, let's just say, in a very overt way. But the more subtle signals of whether somebody is values driven, that is something that, that's not part of being street smart, I don't think.
No, agreed. I agree completely. 100% there. Absolutely. However, after a high-level 20-year career in global media and entertainment, you scaled and sold a brand identity business to a US communications group, creating a life-changing exit for yourself, Jane, and your family. After all your hard work and ups and downs, this is a very good success story, isn't it, Jane?
It was actually a really wonderful thing to happen because at that particular time I was a single parent and
Mm,
my children were quite young and I wasn't seeing them. I was doing a lot of international travel before the business was sold. Well, I had to do that because that was part of the growth strategy, let's just say.
mm,
And this was really, it was pre-internet. I mean, the internet was there, but it wasn't the way it was today. So we were doing a lot of global travel. And my ex also traveled and worked away, and he wasn't really very reliable either as a parent. So essentially that meant that my children were often left in the care of a nanny for
mm.
days on end, and I didn't see them at all. And that was the most painful thing of all, because what mother wants to have children and then not see them and just spend all their life at work? It's
Exactly.
it's not what anybody wants. So that was really the best outcome of selling the business, is it gave me the means to be able to be a mother to my children. And that was very, very simple goal, but that was my goal at the time.
Absolutely, because you didn't really want history to repeat itself, did you? You know, in the same way as your parents didn't give you that emotional love and so on that you wanted. And you didn't want to give that to your children, did you? You didn't want to do the same mistake.
No, well, that was obviously the most painful thing of all,
Mm,
really. But in any case, even if I hadn't have had the childhood that I had, obviously that made it more poignant. But I think for nearly every mother in the world,
mm,
unless there's something very psychologically wrong with them, wants to spend time with their children
of
and
course I
wants
do.
to love them, nurture them. It's just in our DNA, isn't it? As mothers, we were bred to be loving and kind and
Yes.
caring, and having children is a great way to express our softer side, if you like.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. I mean, that's clearly how the softer sex, if you like, are created, aren't they? With that instinctive love for children. That's how it is. I suppose men are the hunters, and the women, in the old terms, men were the hunters, weren't they? And the women stayed back and looked after the children. But
Well, I would to be honest, I know obviously this is maybe an unpopular view, but
mm,
I do think thousands and thousands of years of evolution and civilization
mm,
doesn't change us fundamentally as human beings. And I think, yeah, I mean, look, women are different to men. Definitely. We're wired differently.
yes, completely. A different strain of humanity, really, isn't it, between men and
Yeah,
women? We are completely
exactly.
different. But
Yep.
but made that way for a reason,
Yeah.
so and we know how that works. Today, you help founders of fast growth businesses create irresistible offers that explode their growth. Your other business, Invest Develop Capital Partners, quite an interesting company when I read about that, matches high net worth investors with development projects, which is something you have been doing for many years. So tell us more about Invest Develop Capital Partners. Sounds like a very interesting company, Jane.
Yeah. Well, I don't really often talk about that actually on social media. The reason
Mm,
why is because it's something that I do in a very low key, bespoke way. So I
okay.
have been doing it for some time, but essentially, I don't really want people coming to me and saying I'm an investor or even
Mm,
I'm a developer, because they've seen me on social media. And that might sound a little bit elitist, but it's a very challenging game,
mm,
property development. And most of the people that I work with, whether they are investors or developers, they've been in the game for a very, very long time. And they really know what they're doing. And again, I had to learn some lessons in this industry. And I'm very, very fortunate that some of the lessons that I learned were not actually very painful or difficult. I had one or two challenges, let's just say.
mm,
But I have seen some terrible, terrible things happen to people, which is just awful, because obviously the thing about property development is that it's a very high stakes game. there's a lot of money at stake, and making mistakes, whether it's with the people that you choose to partner with or whether it's just making some mistakes in terms of your profit calculation on a project, for example, can literally ruin people's lives. I know people that have lost millions, and that is no joke, because how can you recover from that? So I don't want to be in that situation of either connecting people or getting involved in risky deals. I like to keep my activity ultra low risk, let's just say. And one of the ways that I do that is by only partnering with extremely experienced people in a very, very low key, under the radar way. That makes sense.
Absolutely. It makes total sense to me. I mean, you have to calculate those risks. I mean, also, it's the people game too, is who you partner with, building that trust up as well, whether they're experienced or not. Can you truly trust them? I mean, you hear so many stories where partnerships break and one of the partners runs off with all the money, for example. That's a bit worrying, isn't it, really? That you have to build that trust up in your business partners.
Yeah. So, I mean, luckily, I think working at a very high level in media and obviously going through the process of merger and acquisition and so on, I'd been exposed to those very high stakes games before where there's an awful lot of money at stake. And I know that people get increasingly ruthless the more money is on the table, if you like. So
Definitely.
sometimes people can be a little naive about this, but essentially you cannot afford to be naive. If you're going to play that high stakes game, whether it's in business or property, well, property is a business anyway, you have to have deep pockets in case anything goes wrong, so that you can afford the best lawyers. If you spend all of your money, let's say you invest all of your money in a deal and you don't have anything in reserve in order to tackle those issues when they come up, then you're putting yourself at risk. And also you do have to make sure that you cover your back with really good lawyers. And also it's all about risk reduction. It's about risk reduction in terms of not just the deal, but the people and the processes and the experience that you have behind you. And also obviously just the skill and the expertise of particularly the legal team that you have in place. So whether you're doing a small deal or a bigger deal, whether you're sitting on the investment side or the development side, this is not a game for amateurs. I don't think so.
Indeed. No, I agree with you completely. That's very well articulated, Jane. That's actually a perfect response, really. Now, I mean, I'm going to bring this up when it's part of your journey. I hope you don't mind. You did suffer from cancer, and your story of overcoming cancer is a remarkable story in itself too. And of course, the lessons you learned throughout your battle with cancer. So what went through your mind right from receiving the news of your diagnosis, and how you dealt with the stigmatization that you experienced and the loss of so-called friends too, which is an incredible thing, thus emphasizing your key takeaway to connect smartly.
Yeah, well, obviously, when you are undergoing treatment for cancer, it does change a lot of things. And even this starts from the diagnosis. So you always expect people to be perhaps shocked, but also supportive. And I think what actually happens is that the people perhaps that you least expected to step up do, and the people that you thought would step up often don't, which always puzzled me. But I think it's to do with, well, it's just to do with them. Sometimes you don't know people in a certain way until you're put in that situation.
Yes.
So that was very, very interesting. And it was a little bit painful, obviously, at times. For example, my youngest daughter, she was still at primary school, and the head teacher, and in fact, all the teachers, because obviously it was only a tiny school, they were all working together. They were very supportive when I was going through treatment. But as soon as I'd finished treatment, and that means the chemotherapy, which lasted about 6 months, they just expected me to kind of snap back and get involved in all the fundraising and everything else that all the other parents did. And I couldn't do that because I had to earn and make money still, at that particular time. But
Mm,
also my priority was really my health and recovering from cancer.
absolutely.
And I still had all of these hospital appointments that I had to go to. I had multiple operations. I had 6 operations. I've had a mastectomy and reconstruction and all sorts
Wow.
of things. I also had the radiotherapy. Yeah, it was quite a serious treatment. And it actually recovering from that and dealing with all the side effects of the drugs, which were very significant, went on for about 5 years.
Wow.
So I did a little bit of work in that time. I was really stepped back from a lot of business stuff, but I just didn't want to do nothing, right? So I did have a business, and then I had obviously the children, and then I had my health. And on top of that, I wasn't going to get involved in a whole load of fundraising for the school and, running cake stalls and having coffee mornings and all those other things that the parents did. And I really felt discriminated against by the school for that.
Oh,
And it was very, very sad because I think, somewhere along the way, there should be more education around what happens, when a parent is diagnosed with cancer and what schools and teachers can actually do to support and make sure that their children are not discriminated against for not
mm.
participating and, to the full in school life. So that was tough.
Well, that's just quite an amazing story. I mean, there's a lot of naivety there, isn't there, on behalf of the school itself, the teachers, and everybody else that's associated with them. I mean, surely people understand that cancer is a major, major problem, and anybody coming out of cancer and surviving it, and thankfully you have, you've got all that to rebuild in yourself again because you've got to build your strength back up, get yourself back into, find yourself again. You need to have me time, don't you, Jane? You've got to have some me time.
You absolutely do, but I think a lot of people, what happens is, and I remember somebody once explained it to me this way. They
Mm,
said, when people are struggling, they're a bit like if you're sitting on a rock, they see you as
mm.
sitting on a rock in the middle of the stormy sea, and they're like splashing, 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 and they're just, thinking that they're going to drown, and they're splashing in the water and they're splashing you. And so effectively the drops of water are like their distress, and they're
Yes.
not really seeing you, and they're not really thinking, well, she's sitting on that rock, but there's no food, there's no boats or
Mm,
whatever. It's just all about me, me, me. So I think in that particular situation, I think they were probably overwhelmed. And I think you just have to forgive people for being selfish, uncaring. And it's not that perhaps if they'd taken a moment to think, well, what can we really do?
mm,
They probably would have come to the conclusion, well, actually, maybe we should give her more support. But what I what I've learned about people is that when people are totally consumed with their own pain, they're not in a position to help anybody else. And it's futile to expect them to. So it's really only the people who have come to terms with their own lives, their own journey. They've actually taken up the challenge of dealing with their stuff, if you like, a little bit more enlightened, let's just say. They've been through some personal growth and they've experienced some pain, maybe come out the other side. Those are the kind of people that are more open, aware, and
mm.
able to give and make a difference.
And I think you're right. I think forgiveness is the right thing to do, isn't it? That's the right approach. Forgive those people for what they are at that time, and hopefully they learn from that and become better people further on down the road. It's just a shame, isn't it, that this happens? It really is because it's such a major, major illness. It's incredible, and your strength obviously came through, and they should have seen that. But yeah, forgiveness is right. I think your
Yeah, for
mess.
yeah, they do say forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do, right? And I think sometimes you just have to, remember those things. If somebody treats you badly, it's usually because of them. It's very rarely because of you. You're just
I
happen to be
agree.
in the way.
I agree completely. And we're getting back to business. Your message is, and I quote, "Your dream is my dream." Let's make it happen. It's a lovely quote, isn't it? And quite right. And your other current business, the Smart Connector, which we briefly mentioned a short while ago, provides consultancy and coaching skills, all based on your life's journey, and more as an entrepreneur investor, top 2.5% global podcaster, brand and online marketer by building multiple businesses, including a London brand identity business that you grew from 1 million to 6 million under 2 years, as we talked about earlier on, quadrupling profits and selling to a US communications group. I mean, some success. So how did the sale of your successful business come to fruition? And why did you sell? I think we mentioned why you sold earlier, but how did it come to fruition?
Yeah, so actually, when I joined the business, it wasn't my business. So I was brought into the business as managing director.
Okay.
So it was basically a struggling design agency. It had been ticking along, more or less making £1 million for about 10 years. So, I mean, it was a mature business, but it was run by two partners. They were both creatives. They had just taken everything out of the business every single year just to pay themselves and put money in their pension and all the rest of it. They had never, ever invested in growing the business. And what happened is one of the partners had just left to work for a rival firm in New York. And the other director was feeling very exposed, as he should have done.
Yes.
And actually, technically, the business was insolvent, which I only found out after I'd joined it. It just slipped into insolvency. So
Wow.
yeah, so he brought me in and said, look, I really need help and I'm going to pay you well and I'm going to give you, really incentivize you to get, build this thing back up because it, otherwise just all this time and effort, you know what it's like, 10 years, my business baby, it's all gone to waste. So it's like, well, okay. So I saw this as an opportunity. So I got a very, very good deal, I would say. I mean, not a fantastic salary, but a decent salary, very high, very highly incentivized on the profit share. And, also some shares in the business, which ended up being 15%. It would have been more, but unfortunately, I was too successful. So in terms of the growth, so we sold it
Wow.
kind of very fast. So really, the shares were assigned, through every year. So it was supposed to be 25%, but we just got there sooner. So anyway, that was that. And so what we did really is it was a very, very, very good company with creatively. So there were very, very nice case studies, some great team of designers. It was definitely, from a creative perspective, it was a very good product. And that was the reason why I joined, because I knew that there was potential there, untapped potential. And so what I said to him was, okay, we need to do things differently. You need to stop taking all the money out of the business and reinvest some of it. Just a
Wow.
classic, I
Yes.
know, just a classic kind of business owner in the creative agency world. That's what they do. They're in the business. In order for it to be their personal piggy bank, if you know what I mean.
I
So
do.
yeah, so I said, no, you can't really do that because unfortunately the two don't go hand in hand. You have to fund growth. So he, to his credit, he accepted that. Yeah, so
Good for
that was
him.
a good start. Yeah, that was a good start. So I said, okay, what we have to do is, instead of all these little itty bitty, title sequences that are coming in, we need to go for the big projects, the whale clients. Those were the global broadcasters. So we have one case study, which is a very old case study, which was ITV. So I said, we need to do a repositioning. Now, obviously, bearing in mind that, I'd come from, big global advertising agencies. So obviously marketing was something that I knew about. So I was pretty kind of confident in terms of what we needed to do. So I said, okay, we've got to go for these big whale clients and we've got to position ourselves as a corporate identity business instead of just a creative agency. And all the designers are not going to like it because they just want to have all those little itty bitty nice little projects that they can put on their own personal show reels or whatever. But you want to make money, this is how we're going to make money. And what we can do is we can say to the designers, they can take on as much freelance work as they want, out of hours. They can use all of our equipment. They can work all weekend if they want, using all of our equipment, but they have to do the boring work during the week. So that was the deal. So they accepted that. He accepted that, and he, took care of the designers, and I went out there and, got the business. And it involved lots of things like going to international television conferences and hosting yachts in Cannes and some stuff that was pretty glamorous, actually,
Oh, I've got to
because,
say, yes.
oh yeah, it was fun.
Wonderful.
Yeah, it was fun. It was hard work, but it was fun. But we had an image that we had to build up. So obviously doing some of that physical stuff, like the yachts in Cannes, was a part of that. But the other thing was PR. We had to do a repositioning exercise. So we hired a PR agency and, got them to put them to work. And I do think that was very, very pivotal as well. And then it just started happening, it just went crazy, absolutely crazy. And I think what happens is you get to the tipping point and, you're struggling. First of all, you're making all these plans and you're thinking, oh, these are just ideas at this point. And, maybe it's never going to happen in the back of your mind, but, let's give it a go. And then obviously you get those green shoots, and then all of a sudden, or this is what happened, is you suddenly get to that tipping point where it turns into an absolute flood of opportunities.
Wow.
And that was what happened. And, we got a couple of really, really big £1 million clients. One of them was ITV and the other one was the German television company, Deutsche Welle.
It's impressive.
And yeah, and on the back of that, the offers started coming in. From a number of different quarters, to purchase the business. And then we ended up going with Interpublic, which is a big US communications company. And yeah, and then it all happened. The business was sold.
Fantastic. What a story. I mean, that's incredible. I mean,
Yeah.
what a lovely story that is too. It's just incredible how
Yeah.
everything all the bricks came together nicely in the build of that,
Yeah.
re-establishing that business. And of course, today, with all that experience, you help clients rapidly grow their businesses, fulfill their purpose, and make an impact in the world. Great stuff. I mean, they're great services indeed, aren't they, Jane?
Well, yes, very, very much in demand. And obviously, there's a lot of people out there who say, I'll help you get more clients and all of that kind of thing. They don't really have the same background as me. And the thing is, that sounded like incredibly boastful.
No.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose it's quite a complex thing, actually growing your business and getting more of the right type of clients. And I have to emphasize it's the right type of clients. It's not just any old clients, because any old clients, anybody can go out there and get any old clients.
Yes.
And you can end up, working for nothing, making no money and just being run ragged. Those are not desirable clients. They're not the clients that you want. The clients that you want are the people that effectively they're going to be your partners and collaborators in terms of taking your business to the next level.
Yes.
So they are going to be clients who pay you enough so that you can reinvest into your growth, for starters. That's very important. And also they're going to be clients that you can really do some good work with, so that both of you feel incredibly proud of the results that you get, and you have fantastic case studies and testimonials that you can share. So I think when people come to me and they say, I'm stuck here in this particular area, that's a lot of what is going on, really, is that they have clients, but they're just not the clients that they want, or maybe they are attracting the wrong type of opportunities, or perhaps they are just not getting enough of the right type of opportunities. So they have this skewed idea that there's something wrong with the market. And usually it's not that there's something wrong with the market, because we live in a global marketplace now where there are endless opportunities. There are probably thousands more opportunities for anybody than there were, say, 20 years ago. It's just they don't know how to reach them. So it's really a sort of two-pronged thing. On the whole, it's message to market is something that people get very, very stuck on, and how to communicate in this very cold, fast-paced environment that we are all operating within today. And that's something that is, it's a real skill set of mine, and it's very, very important. And then, of course, the other thing is really just the route to market, which is, okay, where do I go fishing? And, how do I catch those big fish? Because I don't want to go trawler fishing and have all the minnows. I
Indeed.
want to, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
No, that's a fantastic story. I mean, you can say, oh, well, I can say this now. You've walked the walk, haven't you, Jane? And your methods at the Smart Connector aren't just theory or wishful thinking. They're based on proven approaches that have made millions for both your own and your clients' businesses. So let us know more, Jane, here. I mean, you told us quite a bit anyway. That's just a fantastic thing. You do walk the walk, don't you?
Yeah, I think so. Yes. I think walking the walk for me means, have you got genuine experience, or are you just
Mm,
talking a good game? So unfortunately, there are a lot of people on social media who do talk a good game. There are a lot of people who lie. They
yes.
outright lie. And unfortunately, social media is the perfect playground for people to do that. So it is always important, I think, to really get to know someone's background. You have to decide whether they have the authority and the credibility to
Mm,
really make a difference to you. And it's not just about what they say, it's about what they've done. And that can go back many, many, many years. So anybody can pop up tomorrow and say, I can help you get more clients, or I can do this or
yes.
do that, whatever niche you're in. And that's an easy claim to make, but actually, what have they done in their previous businesses or careers that make them credible? And more importantly, have they been in your shoes and
Mm,
done what you would like to do? And when I say in your shoes, I don't mean they have the same kind of business as you, but have they, let's just say, taken a business from 0 to 1 million, or from 1 to 6 million, as I did? Whatever your aspiration is, it's important that anybody that you take on has that credibility and has that experience that you can just piggyback off, so that you can have the shortcut that you need.
I agree. And I've always said, actually, over the years, when you talk about individuals or indeed companies, small companies, they seem to talk the talk, but can they walk the walk? And that's always the thing to look at, isn't it? You've got to look at both, really. You've got to have the skill set to be able to talk the talk, but at the same time, walk it as well. So it's an end-to-end piece, isn't it? Both are important
Yeah,
value
well,
parts.
you do have to be able to talk the talk as well, because
Mm,
if you cannot project your value to
correct.
your market, then unfortunately you will get overlooked. And that is also something that I help people do, because obviously I have a
Mm,
background in media and entertainment. I studied drama and English. I worked in the theatre. I worked in film and TV. I did all of that before I entered the agency world. So I was brought up, let's just say, to communicate clearly. If you can't communicate in the media world, you
mm,
are nobody. You would not last 5 minutes. So that is really part of my heritage and history. And I think when people who have a skill set in a very different area, let's just
mm,
say they're a technology people, they won't have been exposed to those kind of influences.
indeed.
They won't really know where to start. They'll think that they're doing okay, but they're not really. So it's up to me to say to them, look, I'm afraid this is not good enough, and here's what you should be doing in order to make it stronger and better, and for your clients to really get the value of what it is that you do. So people need help. They need a
They
lot
do.
of help with that.
They certainly do indeed. And
Yeah.
you get that quite a lot. You mentioned the technology sector there, and technologists are so wrapped up in the technology, they're unable then to market themselves properly, are they? They just get totally wrapped up in the technical aspects and don't see the bigger plans. It happens quite often. I've noticed
Yeah.
that over the years.
Definitely. So I actually have quite a lot of clients in tech, and they tend to be quite detail orientated people, which of
Indeed.
course isn't surprising, because you have to be detail orientated in order to be good at tech.
Mm,
So why should that be surprising? But what tends to happen is they tend to kind of by default also be very features orientated, because the detail and the features, they're all linked. Whereas obviously the skill set of marketing your services means you have to be a bit bigger picture. You
Definitely.
have to be able to, it's very psychologically driven, of course. It's all about sales psychology. So you have to be able to extract the benefits and the value and be able to communicate. Obviously, a lot of people know this in a more emotional, relatable way. And they're just not those type of people. So they need people like me to just put them on the right track.
They certainly do, Jane. I mean,
Yeah.
the personalised growth plans that you do develop together with your clients are underpinned by solid, proven principles, naturally, learned over decades and repeated through numerous real-world successes. It truly is a personalised service for each client, isn't it, Jane? Every client's different, and it has to be personalised to each client.
Yeah, so that is the strategic approach. So I am a strategic brand marketer. And what that means is that strategy comes before tactics, because tactics are cookie cutter.
Mm,
And unfortunately, what's happened, particularly in the online space over, let's just say, the last 10 years, is that there's been a proliferation of cookie cutter solutions that have been packaged up and put into courses that people have brought. So, for example, I mean, I've done a few of them myself. So I did an automated webinar program, I don't know, probably about 4 years ago, something like that.
mm,
So essentially you go through the program and you learn all of the tech and you learn how to do it. And then, which is fine. So, you've got your funnel and, you've got your customer journey and it's all been mapped out for you, which is obviously the tech way, right? So you've got all of that. But then that is not going to work unless what you actually put in there is persuasive and convincing enough and
mm,
relevant enough and valuable enough to the people that you're talking to, for them to actually say, wait a minute, let's forget about everybody else that's been pitching to me. That's who I need to talk to. That is the person that I need, or the help that I need, or whatever. So for me, tactics are really important, but they need to come downstream from the strategy. The strategy is meeting people where they are, and
mm,
really it sort of merges their own skill set, their resources, their goals, their ambitions, and also the type of clients that they want, which could be, if anything from like 2 clients a year, if you're like a 20 million pound business where each client could be worth 3 million, right? So 2 clients a year would be a fantastic result. To 10 clients a month if you've got a much smaller offer, let's just say, or a much faster kind of turnaround. So everybody is different, and how can you apply the same tactics to both of those examples? You
you
just can't.
can't.
They're completely different.
They are indeed. Absolutely incredible. And Jane, unlike many who claim to be brand marketing experts, and indeed, as mentioned earlier, you've truly walked the walk, as we said, through your high-level 20-plus-year career in global brand marketing, developing business and managing campaigns for many of the world's best-known brands. So quite a journey. And what global brands are you able to talk to us about where you made the difference for their success?
Oh my God. Well, there were so many
Oh,
really, but
sure.
yeah. So British Airways, Discovery Networks, Coca-Cola,
Oh, wow.
ITV, a lot of automotive brands, Europcar, Saab, obviously then now deceased,
Oh,
BMW, lots and lots and lots, really. I mean, more than I can
indeed.
even think about. But yeah, so I don't know.
An envious list, isn't it, really? It's a huge list of corporations, global corporations. It's a fantastic list.
Yeah, well, I think when you're working for a global brand agency,
Mm,
then global brand agencies, just like global management consultancies, are obviously set up to serve global brands, because global brands, obviously, they have, locations across the world, and so do global agencies.
mm,
So it's just the way it works. So, actually serving those kind of businesses, that's what you do when you're working for a global agency. In terms of the brand identity agency, well, that was a very niche business. We made it a niche business, but it was also a global business because media is a global business. It always has been.
Indeed.
Television is a very global business. People would gather around these global television conferences like way before a lot of business was done online. And yeah, so I mean, it's just the way it was, really. And if you're working for, in media and you want to get those big budgets, those big juicy projects, then you have to go global. And that was something that was a real catalyst for our growth, is actually moving out of that localized London market, which was very saturated and very busy and very red ocean, as they say,
Yes.
and, moving into a much more rarefied environment where there were just very, very few genuine competitors.
Yeah, and a bigger opportunity as well. Bigger
Yeah.
sea, bigger
Yeah.
fish, bigger opportunities.
Yeah.
Quite
Much bigger
agree.
fish.
Oh, indeed they are. And as one of your clients, I'll use this one, Kevin Wanacott, who's a lawyer, states, and I'll quote what he said. It's a very nice statement. Jane brings a vast amount of experience and skill in helping her clients achieve their ambitions. I have no hesitation in recommending her to those who are serious about pushing their business as well as personal growth to its highest level. I mean, that's some recommendation, Jane, isn't it? And this is just one of many. There's many more I've seen, but I just used one there. It's fantastic.
Well, yeah. Kevin, a lovely guy, a lawyer. Yeah. So I do have some lawyers as clients. I do have some technology people. I have consultants. I have NEDs. This is for my program. Obviously, I still do consulting for bigger businesses as well. But in my program, they tend to be independents or small business owners, and they usually have a product or service that is, when I say it's all about them, it might not be something that's unique. So Kevin, for example, he's a cost lawyer. So it's not that he's the only person in the world offering those services, but essentially people buy people.
They do.
And if you're a service provider, we all know that. So developing your personal brand, being really packaging up your offer and becoming just a bit stronger and more consistent in terms of your performance on social media and in your online assets is the thing really that, unlocks growth. So it's just a combination of all of those things. And as I said, it's the thing that I love to help people with.
Oh, fantastic. And you have stated as well that the great resignation is in full flow. I love this. It's been really good, which has forever changed the world of work. And it has, hasn't it? As we know it, where people are leaving their traditional 9 to 5 careers in droves. It is happening, I can assure you, and starting exciting, profitable business founded on the wisdom and experience they've acquired in those days of 9 to 5. You openly invite clients and individuals to read your Quit Big book. Amazing. And purchase your profitable consultant fast start mini course, which I believe is coming soon. Sounds all very informative, Jane. That's wonderful. Book and a film, a video too. It's incredible.
Yeah, well, actually, I'm just in the process of launching the book at the moment. But actually, what I'm also going to do is I'm going to create an app, because it's going to be an AI-driven app.
Wonderful.
So yeah, I'm really looking forward to that, because obviously what's happened over the last year or so in particular is that ChatGPT has absolutely, blown up. Everybody's talking about AI, and for good reason, because developments in AI are so incredibly
Amazing.
powerful and very, very fast right now. So people are, as they're getting used to using AI, the expert landscape, let's just say, is changing. So what we know now in terms of buying online courses, consuming online courses, and so on, look, they're going to be around for a while. But what's going to happen is the appetite is going to shift more and more and more to interactive tools that are a bit like, let's just say, expert versions of ChatGPT. So that is the future of learning. And of course, what that means, and I often say this to my clients, is there has never been a better time to launch a business as an expert, because the big problem that all experts have had up until now is the time for money trap. Because obviously there's only one of you I mean, even I have it, I can only take on so many clients because if I'm working with my clients one-to-one, there's only so many hours in a day.
Of course.
So if I'm working as a consultant, obviously my program is more leveraged and more scalable, but it's still, I'm still working with my clients one-to-one.
Mm.
It's just I offer other things like groups and obviously my online resources as well. So it's more leveraged. But essentially, when these apps kind of take hold, people are going to be able to discover you, obviously, through things like this. They'll consume some of your content, or maybe they'll, read my book or your book if you decided to write a book or whatever. They'll come across you in some way and that guy or that woman or whatever, they're really interesting. I like what they do. And then you can give them a lower cost opportunity to really get everything, all of your wisdom and experience all bottled up in this app, which is great for them because they're not going to be paying thousands of pounds as my clients do at the moment, or dollars, to engage with me. Obviously, they can do that as an upsell, but they can also get all of that wisdom and experience in a very customized way by actually buying into this app, which then makes it completely scalable as well. So it is great for the experts that actually invest in these things too. So it's
Absolutely.
exciting times ahead.
It certainly is, and I even use AI actually in the production of my shows here. I see the value of AI. Even if it's just getting the graphics, updating words, or sentences, whatever I write, to see how AI can rewrite it for me. Is it better? Oh, it's great to use, isn't it? It really is. So I'm kind of pro AI. I really am. You have to be these days.
Well,
It's the market. It's really is what it's all about.
yeah, definitely. And my book, it's a proper book, it's not just an ebook or something. I mean, it's about 40,000 words, I think. So it's a decent length.
Yeah.
But I feel as though it took me far less time than it did for me to write my first book. And I also think it's a much better book because of AI. So I would see something and I would be like, oh, that is a very interesting concept. I want to, like, for example, the Goldilocks zone. So I heard about the Goldilocks zone. I was like, what is the Goldilocks zone? And then it's like, a little, not too big, not too small. What does that actually mean when it's applied to business? So instead of like doing all the research on Google and, reading lots of magazine articles, I just basically asked AI about the Goldilocks zone. And I found that this is actually like a scientific principle that is to do with the distance between planets and the sun. So actually the Goldilocks zone is the point at which a planet is able to sustain life. That is where it comes from.
Interesting.
Yes, but it is also at the end of the probability curve, if you see what I mean.
I do, yes.
Oh, yes,
Oh,
it's
wow.
very, very interesting. But yet it's very applicable to business because business works in exactly the same way. So I found that out in about 5 minutes from an AI search, and then I put that into my book. And had I done that, say, 5 years ago when we didn't have these tools available, it could have taken me half a day really to find that out. So that is the thing, that it is really giving us creators in particular the opportunity to be far more powerful and far more effective. As you said, Lord, with Lord Russell, with this podcast, I'm not sure what tools you use, but you're finding that yourself, aren't you?
I am
As a
indeed.
creator.
Absolutely. And of course, in doing so, you actually give yourself some time back too, don't you? So it's effectively doing a lot of the hard work for you. It's doing all the deep diving, the deep digging, and coming up with selected phrases and the terms in terms of words that read well and is exciting to look at. So yeah, I do use it. I mean, I am a writer myself, but I've seen the value in AI. I truly am. It's fantastic.
Yeah, I think where people go wrong is, look, if you are not a creator, obviously you're a creator. Your podcasts are fantastic. You
Thank you.
love doing it. You're very passionate about it. I'm a creator as well. Obviously, I do podcasting, writing, and that is the thing that I love. If you are not a creator and you think that AI is going to do the job for you, So one of my clients, for example, he was talking about a personal trainer that he's working with who's telling him, I'm writing a book every week. And I said, we were talking about it in my group, and I said, I bet that book's rubbish. And
Yes.
everybody else agreed.
Yes, absolutely. You can't write a book in a week.
Well, he said AI was writing it for him.
Yeah, it's not
Now,
right. That's
well, it's not, straight away that that's going to be a terrible book,
you do.
because it's really the interface between humans and AI. That's where the magic happens. It's not going to do the work for you. You have to inject yourself into the frame and just
Absolutely.
use it as a tool. I think that's the takeaway.
Well, yeah, I think you're right, Jane. I mean, it took me 2 years to write my autobiography, my first book, as you can see in the backdrop behind me on this podcast. I mean, but it was such an enjoyable thing to do, to write that. It was wonderful.
Well, so lovely. It really is. And writing is one of the, for me anyway, I love writing as
Yeah, I
well.
do.
And I think it is just one of the greatest joys in life, because it's just us, in communion with ourselves. It's quite a spiritual practice, I think. It's wonderful. I just love it.
I quite agree. And we've mentioned about your podcast as well just now. Of course, a top 2.5% across all podcasts globally, I hasten to add. And this being the Smart Connector podcast, where you interview successful entrepreneurs and sector experts in your network. I mean, that's all very exciting, isn't it? And successful. To get it to top 2.5 globally as well, or top 2.5% globally, that's a real achievement, isn't it, Jane?
Yeah, so I'm taking a little break from it, because obviously I've got this book to launch, but I've been very, very consistent over the course of about 4 years, releasing an episode every week. And I think what happens is, it has a snowball effect. That's I think the interesting thing about these, what they call evergreen assets, like
Yes.
podcasting and YouTube.
Yes.
And I remember when I first launched it, I didn't even intend to launch a podcast. I went on a mastermind to learn how to publish a book, which was my first book. And then when I got there, it seemed that everybody was launching podcasts. And I thought, well, this sounds like fun. I'd quite like to do one of those as well. So I did. And I didn't know what I was doing. I just thought it sounds interesting and it sounds like fun and I'd like to do it. So I'll try it. And then what happened is, of course, I did the first 2 or 3 episodes and hardly anybody listened. I think when I got 10 listeners, I was like, wow, well, 10 is quite good, but it's hardly, when I thought about all the effort that had gone in, I thought, well, is it really worth it? And I think that's what people think when they start a podcast or they start a YouTube channel and then they give up. But I think what happens is, if you stay consistent and you keep on putting out those episodes, you start building up what's called this wall of content. And then people start going into your back catalogue. And then all of a sudden, those episodes or those videos or whatever that only got 10 views or 20 views or whatever, all of a sudden they're getting 100, 200, 1,000, 2,000.
Exactly.
And that's the snowball effect. And so the more you do it, the more consistently you do it, and obviously the better quality stuff you put out, the more that snowball effect happens. And it's a great joy to see that taking off.
It certainly
And
is.
yeah. And I think one of the things that I loved about my podcast is when I would see that it was trending in parts of the world where I knew that they could never afford my services, like
Wow.
Ghana or Venezuela or Pakistan, or, all of those places where, I would have interviews with really, really, really successful and inspirational people who'd, sold businesses for like 100 million, $750 million with one guy that I interviewed.
Yes.
If you are listening to this in Venezuela, which is terrible, terrible, terrible struggles, and you hear about this guy who actually started as a gang member on the streets, terrible, terrible background. in Los Angeles, and he ended up selling this business for 750 million, was more than that
Wow.
actually, $750 million.
Wow.
That's so inspirational. And for people who are struggling and they've got nothing and they're just like living hand to mouth day to day or whatever, but they have this phone and they have access to these, listen to these inspirational people, that's incredibly rewarding because you're really putting some value in the world, aren't you?
Without doubt, complete value. I totally agree with that 100%.
Yeah.
And anybody thinking, as you said, doing a podcast or YouTube channel, you've got to stick at it. You can't give up. You've got to keep going. As you say, build this wall of content. I mean, I notice now that some of my podcasts I did in the very early days, over a year ago, are now getting downloads, still getting downloaded. So that wall of content theory you've explained there does work, Jane. It really does.
Well, it does. And it's that is the difference, obviously, between, as I said, evergreen content, which is, books, podcasts, YouTube, anything that kind of, that people can peel back the layers and discover more and more and more, as opposed to social media, which, inevitably your posts, they go down the feed and they disappear, right? So
Yes.
that's why it is, it is valuable. And I think the secret to success, once you build a certain kind of critical mass, obviously comes from repurposing.
It
So,
does.
for example, now I do have a very simple system for collecting. Just keep all of my social media posts on my phone, and then I repurpose some of them into emails, for example, or and obviously it's very easy to take a transcript from a podcast or a YouTube channel and upload it as a blog, so there is so much that you can do. Obviously you can take short clips, can't you, from an interview like this, and then you can turn them into shorts and you can put them up on TikTok or Instagram or YouTube shorts. So there are so many different ways that you can take one piece of content and distribute it across multiple channels. And of course, technology makes that possible, but we're just living through an amazing time. I think just the
I think
ability to
so.
do all these things
Oh, it's
as a
incredible.
creator.
As
Yeah.
a creator, I quite agree. And with all of this amazing discussion we're having, Jane Bayler is the Smart Connector, a London-based passionate serial entrepreneur, brand marketer, and business growth exploder. I mean, do you think this sums you up well, Jane?
Yeah, I think so. Well, that was how I described myself, right? But a business growth exploder. So obviously that sounds like a wild claim. And, some people don't like big claims. So
No.
they're like, a business growth exploder, really? But, I've done it, I have. And I think obviously this doesn't happen overnight. And I think I'm never going to say to anybody, look, I can explode your growth in, as some people do, click to client in 48 hours, 24 hours, something like that. That is actually very, very difficult to do. So, as I said, there's a lot of people making very wild and excessive claims. But I think the idea of exploding your business and actually making that a reality is infinitely possible. But you have to give it time, and you have to be consistent, and you have to get the right help from the right people and not give up. And I think that is where the winners really happen,
I
because
agree.
most people do give up, and they give up too soon. I've done that in the past. I've made many mistakes. I have started businesses just for the money. And then I've got to the point where it's like everybody's saying, this is a successful business, because every business that I start is successful because I know how to start a business and how to make it successful. Unfortunately, what I've also done in the past is I've started businesses that are just like, oh, I can make some money there. And then I start the business, I make some money. Then everybody's saying, you got a really successful business there, Jane. That's going really well. Time to scale. What are you going to do next? You're going to do that. And then I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
I just can't be bothered. And so I've learned that you not only do you have to have the ambition to scale a business, but you also have to be very passionate about that business. And if you're not
Yes, I agree.
passionate, unfortunately, you will get to the point where you achieve success. And then, like me, you're just like, do you know what? I don't know. Not feeling it.
Well, that happens to a lot of entrepreneurs, doesn't it? Most entrepreneurs have many failures before they get success, because that's the learning curve, I guess. And I guess it's just like a bit like writing a podcast or doing a podcast or YouTube channel. Don't give up. I mean, entrepreneurs don't give up, do they? If you're a serial entrepreneur, as you are, and I classify myself as one a bit as well, you don't give up. Just keep going. You can't stop, can you? Really? It's one
No,
of those
you
things.
can't. You can't stop. And I think the thing about entrepreneurship is that most of the entrepreneurs that I know, even incredibly wealthy and successful ones, they don't want to stop
No.
because it's too much fun.
It is, absolutely. I've always
Yeah.
said to people I know, Russell's not retiring because retirement isn't for me. I would go nuts if I didn't have something to think about and do. So I will continue. So it keeps your mind active, it keeps you in the game, and it probably helps to engineer a longer life, actually, to be fair.
Well,
So,
yeah, yeah. I mean, people, I'm of the age where I do know some people who, they talk about retiring,
mm,
and anybody that I know in entrepreneurial circles, they very rarely have the retirement conversation. They're just
absolutely.
like, you know what? Yeah, I might wind down. I might do like if take a few more holidays, have a few more hours in the day, maybe, just do things a little bit differently. But retiring, it's like,
Oh,
well, that's the idea, that's a very old-fashioned idea that
oh,
people who are on the clock and they just
yes.
couldn't wait to kind of live their lives finally. It's like, oh, I'm just so glad that we don't live in that age, really. I would hate to think of getting to the age of 65 or whatever and it's like, finally I can live my life.
No,
Oh.
live it now and keep working, keep
Yeah,
doing it, enjoy life and have the thrill of business, because it is a thrill. It really is.
it is.
I mean, your Smart Connector book, I've got to mention this, The Entrepreneur's Blueprint for Business Relationship Success, which is available on Amazon, isn't it, Jane? So if the listeners are listening, go and look for The Entrepreneur's Blueprint for Business on Amazon, a book by Jane Bayler. Why not?
Yeah, thank you. Well, as I said, I wrote that a few years ago, and I'm actually, my next project is going to be to update that because so
Mm,
much has changed, obviously, over the last few years. But really, that's just a nice little handbook for people who are early stage entrepreneurs, I would say.
yes,
And I think when people come out of employment, a lot of the time they don't realize the importance of your network, and really, your network is your net worth.
exactly.
Honestly, that is perhaps an overused phrase, but our business is really all about people. Success in business is all about people, and so that's why that book is, yes, it's a handbook for entrepreneurs who are perhaps early stage, but also it is to tell them why and how they need to value the people around them and how to make relationships really work for them to lift them higher.
Absolutely. And we're coming towards the end now, Jane. We're over the hour. Would you believe it? Crikey.
Wow.
What is next in the world of Jane Bailey? Obviously, just mentioned you're going to write another book, which is great. But any other visions you have moving forwards?
Well, I've always got my hand in the property stuff, the development really. So there's always some interesting things going on there. But as I said, I keep it very, very low key and kind of below the radar because I really only work with a very, very small number of people. Really, I'm looking forward to launching the book, developing the app. I'm also working on an AI platform now, so
Excellent.
that's very exciting, an AI marketing platform, and I'm working with some of my clients on that as well. So I'm doing some done for you services as well, helping them actually learn how to use AI to market their businesses more effectively. So yeah, all of that stuff is happening, and always happy to have a conversation if AI is something that you want to use in order to make your business more successful and obviously leverage your time better and just get better results, because it's all out there and it's all happening.
It is all happening. It is all out there. I quite agree. And thank you very much, Jane. It's a fantastic rendition there. Your life has been amazing. I'm sure actually you've got lots ahead of you as well, haven't you? Really, lots more good stuff to get involved with. AI and everything else out there. Why not? Exciting days ahead, years ahead.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Well, thank you so much for having me again, Lord Russell. It has been
Absolutely
such a
welcome.
pleasure, and I really enjoyed talking to you today.
Thank you very much.
for inviting me.
Likewise. And as always, on the World of Lord Russell podcast talk show, we could talk forever, Jane, about your life in business as a business leader and motivational speaker. There's much more to talk about, I'm sure. It's been a huge pleasure as always. And as always, the pleasure is all mine. And of course, the show's audience, when this podcast is released on the World of Lord Russell podcast talk show and the Lord Russell Baker YouTube channel. So thank you, Jane. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll give you Jane Bayler and a big round of applause here, Jane.
Oh,
Fantastic
thank you.
podcast.
Thank you.
It really was.
Jane Bayler is the Smart Connector, a London-based, passionate serial entrepreneur, brand marketer and business growth exploder who helps overlooked and undervalued consultants and sector experts generate consistent, scalable revenues through becoming the go-to choice of their dream clients. If you've enjoyed this episode, we'd really appreciate you liking, rating, and reviewing the podcast on the platform you've heard it on. And check out the links in the show notes if you'd like to connect with Jane or any of her guests in person. Thank you for listening and come back soon.